It is the 2024 National Tax Conference in Abuja, themed Economic Stabilization for Equity, Ensuring Fairness in Fiscal Reforms.
as it were.
A
But the
diverse
theme of the
audience
video is
gathered,
restoring the
including
status quo
members of civil
across
society
sectors,
organizations,
segmentation,
development
for
partners, and
productivity,
policymakers.
and
This event
that's one of
provided a
the
platform to
highly
discuss the future of Nigeria's fiscal policies and the potential for achieving greater
realized.
fairness in the
And
country's tax system. In his keynote address, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, delivered a comprehensive update on Nigeria's ongoing fiscal reform process. He emphasized the historic opportunity the nation has to address deep-rooted flaws in its tax system. According to Oyedele, the current reforms represent a once-in-a-lifetime chance to create a tax framework that prioritizes the vulnerable, reduces inequality, and fosters economic stability. Oyedele called for a shift towards a fairer and more inclusive tax system, advocating for policies that promote equity and alleviate economic disparities. He highlighted that the success of these reforms hinges on the collective efforts of all stakeholders to champion changes that reflect Nigeria's commitment to fairness and inclusivity.
We cannot continue to tax poverty. We cannot continue to tax capital. We cannot continue to tax investment. We cannot continue to punish production. We cannot continue to be in the way of productivity and then magically hope that our country will be one of the greatest in the world. There's a world of difference between our aspirations and our policy actions, and that needs to change.
Awad Musa Rafsanjani, Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, noted the importance of transparency and citizen engagement in the reform process. He urged the government to provide clear information and involve Nigerians in discussions on fiscal policies. Rafsanjani also stressed the need for evidence-based decision-making, particularly on contentious issues such as the continuation or elimination of consumption taxes. He argued that a data-driven approach would not only enhance public trust, but also ensure the effectiveness of the reforms.
We need to look at the issues around the need for clarification on non-essential items and what constitutes, non-essential items. It is very important. We also need to ensure that compliance rate of the current VAT regime, is also properly, defined. We also want to ensure that administrative framework of this is also properly, stated. We also want to make sure that all the recommendations, all the issues that various organizations, including even the Labour Congress, the human rights organizations, and many other tax experts that are proposing are things that are going to constitute the reform eventually.
Society groups at the conference reiterated the critical role of progressive taxation in addressing inequality and fostering sustainable development. They advocated for policies that require the wealthy to contribute their fair share, which they believe is essential to reducing poverty and hunger.
The poverty incidence is increasing, inequality is increasing, poverty is rising. People are dying. In fact, the situation now is an economic emergency situation for many Nigerians. Going to the villages, going to the communities where we work as tax justice group and seeing what is happening, the coping mechanisms of people within these communities is quite challenging.
Nigeria's inequality problem is staggering. The top 1% of Nigerians own more than 25% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom 50% control just 4.7%. Now, to put this in perspective, a person in the top 1% is 271 times wealthier than someone in the bottom half. Meanwhile, over 63% of the population live in multidimensional poverty, with millions going hungry every day.
So tax issues actually sit at the very core of both the PFM cycle and the implementation of fiscal policy. And without a tax system that works for everyone, we can't have any service delivery in Nigeria. We can't have hospitals, we cannot have good roads, We cannot have good teachers to teach our children in good schools.
As we seek to address our revenue challenges, how do we complement this with mechanisms to address our spending and accountability challenges? The need for this policy proposal to be technically sound and administratively feasible and politically acceptable cannot be overemphasized.
This conference sees participants echoing a shared sentiment that Nigeria's fiscal reforms represent a golden opportunity to establish a more equitable tax system that prioritizes social justice and economic stability. Oluwatobi Eniitan, reporting for TV Platinum.